They say love can be deadly. But what happens when obsession turns into murder? This is the tragic case of Haley Anderson, a young woman with a bright future whose life was cut short by someone she once considered a friend. Hey, true crime fans! I'm your host, Eamon, and I'm thrilled to share crime tales across times with you. Each episode will explore a new case, examining the evidence and discussing the twists and turns. My goal is to create a community where we can discuss these cases, share our thoughts, and learn from each other. So, let's get started. Haley Anderson was a 22-year-old nursing student at Binghamton University, full of life, energy, and ambition. She was known for her free-spirited nature, her love for adventure, and her close-knit circle of friends. Always the life of the party, she had an infectious laugh that could brighten any room, and a compassionate heart that made her a natural caretaker. Her friends admired her ability to make people feel welcome, and her professors saw her potential to make a difference in the medical field. Haley was passionate about traveling and had dreams of working as a nurse overseas. She often spent her free time hiking, exploring new places, and documenting her adventures on social media. She had a bright future ahead of her, filled with endless possibilities. But beneath the surface of her vibrant life was a dark presence, one that would ultimately lead to her tragic end. In the months leading up to her death, Haley's friends noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. She sometimes seemed distracted, her usual carefree smile faltering. Those closest to her had an unsettling feeling that something was wrong, but no one could have predicted the horrifying turn of events that was about to unfold. Orlando Tercero wasn't just another classmate. He was a looming presence in Haley's life. Their connection started as a casual friendship, but Orlando wanted more. When Haley didn't reciprocate his feelings, his admiration turned into something dark. Friends recalled how Orlando would sulk when Haley spent time with others, especially her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Kevin. He would bombard her with messages, show up at places uninvited, and find ways to make her feel guilty for not prioritizing him. His behavior grew increasingly obsessive. He once waited outside her apartment for hours, and there were nights when she confided in friends about feeling uneasy around him. Then came the most chilling warning sign: Haley's car tires were slashed. Though there was no proof, everyone had the same suspicion: Orlando. But even with the growing unease, no one imagined how far he would go. This wasn't just a case of unrequited love. It was an obsession that was spiraling out of control, and soon it would reach a deadly climax. March 8, 2018, Haley Anderson's friends grew uneasy when she didn't respond to their calls or texts. It was completely out of character for her to ignore messages, especially when she had made plans to meet them. At first, they assumed she had fallen asleep or was caught up with something, but as the hours ticked by, their concern deepened into fear. Something wasn't right. Desperate to find her, they turned to technology, using a phone tracking app to locate her last known position. What they saw on the screen sent chills down their spines. Haley's phone was at Orlando Tercero's apartment. A sinking feeling set in. Haley had told them about Orlando before, about how he had become obsessive and unpredictable. Had he done something to her? They rushed to his apartment and pounded on the door, calling her name. No answer. The silence was unnerving. It was late, but lights could be seen inside. They knocked again, harder this time, but the apartment remained eerily quiet. Fearing the worst, they searched for another way in. That's when they noticed an open window. Heart pounding, one of them climbed through, pushing aside the curtains. What they found inside would scar them forever. Haley lay motionless on Orlando's bed, her once vibrant face now lifeless, her skin disturbingly pale. The room was eerily still, almost as if time had stopped. A thick, suffocating silence filled the air before it was broken by gasps of horror. The bruises around her neck told a grim story. She had been strangled. Beside her, a handwritten note in Spanish rested on a nearby table. It was Orlando's last message, a twisted apology, a cold confession of what he had done. But no amount of words could undo his crime. And Orlando? He was gone. The man who had taken Haley's life had already vanished, like a ghost into the night, leaving only devastation in his wake. While Haley's friends were still trying to process the horrifying discovery, Orlando Tercero was already far away. His escape was not a panicked reaction. It was a carefully calculated plan, executed with chilling precision. In the hours after the crime, Orlando methodically wiped down surfaces, removing any possible fingerprints or DNA that could link him to the murder. He gathered and disposed of incriminating items, making sure to erase as much evidence as possible. The only thing he left behind was the disturbing handwritten note near Haley's lifeless body, his twisted attempt at closure for a crime that could never be justified. But Orlando wasn't just covering his tracks. He had a destination in mind. Surveillance footage would later reveal his next moves, a calm, collected man walking away from his apartment, as if nothing had happened. Cameras caught him disposing of several items in a dumpster, then heading to a nearby ATM to withdraw cash. This was all part of his escape plan. From there, Orlando made his way to John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, where he boarded a flight to Nicaragua, his parents' home country, where he also held citizenship. By the time Haley's friends contacted the police, he was already thousands of miles away. But even in another country, he couldn't run forever. The hunt for Orlando Tercero had only just begun. As soon as investigators pieced together what had happened, they moved swiftly. A warrant for Orlando's arrest was issued, and law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, worked to track him down. But there was a major problem. He was now in Nicaragua, a country that does not extradite its own citizens to the United States. For days, his whereabouts remained unknown. He had vanished into the Nicaraguan countryside, avoiding detection while American officials desperately sought a way to bring him back. Haley's devastated family watched in frustration as the legal system seemed to fail them. Then, in a shocking twist, Orlando reappeared, but not in the way anyone expected. After days on the run, he turned up at a Nicaraguan hospital, seeking treatment for self-inflicted wounds. Whether this was a genuine suicide attempt or a ploy for sympathy remained unclear. Some believed it was his way of avoiding immediate arrest, hoping that hospitalization would delay his capture. Others speculated that the guilt and pressure had finally caught up to him. Whatever the case, his time as a free man was over. Local authorities took him into custody, but instead of being extradited back to the U.S., he would now face trial in Nicaragua, under its own legal system. For Haley's grieving family, this was a bitter pill to swallow. They wanted to see Orlando face justice in an American courtroom, where he had committed the crime. Instead, they were forced to trust a foreign court system to decide the fate of the man who had taken their daughter's life. With international legal barriers in place, the fight for justice was far from over. The trial of Orlando Tercero in Nicaragua was nothing short of intense. prosecutors laid out a chilling case, arguing that this was no crime of passion. It was a calculated act fueled by jealousy and obsession. They presented evidence showing how Orlando had become possessive over Haley, how he had stalked her movements, and how he had carefully planned his escape to Nicaragua after the murder. Witness testimonies from Haley's friends painted a disturbing picture of his controlling behavior and growing resentment. On the other side, Orlando's defense team tried to shift the narrative. They claimed he acted in a moment of emotional distress, fueled by alcohol and rejection. They argued that his actions were not premeditated, but rather a tragic, impulsive act of desperation. His lawyers sought leniency, portraying him as a heartbroken man who lost control in the heat of the moment. But what made this trial particularly remarkable was an unexpected moment. Haley's family was given the opportunity to address the court. This was rare in Nicaraguan legal proceedings, but their emotional testimonies were so powerful that the judge allowed it. Through tears, Haley's loved ones spoke of her kindness, her dreams, and the unbearable pain of losing her in such a brutal way. They pleaded for justice, not just for Haley, but for all victims of gender-based violence. In the end, the court saw through the defense's argument. Orlando Tercero was found guilty of femicide, a charge specifically used in Nicaragua for gender-based murders. The judge handed down the maximum penalty, 30 years in prison. Though it was the harshest sentence available under Nicaraguan law, it did little to ease the grief of Haley's family. Justice had been served, but it could never bring her back. For Haley's family and friends, the verdict brought a sense of justice, but no court ruling could ever bring her back. Her loved ones continue to honor her memory, advocating for awareness of the warning signs of obsessive and toxic relationships. Orlando remains behind bars in Nicaragua, where he will serve out his sentence far from the U.S. justice system. But the haunting reality remains. Haley Anderson had her whole life ahead of her, and it was stolen by someone who claimed to care for her. What do you think about this case? Should Orlando have been tried in the U.S.? Could anything have been done to prevent this tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more shocking true crime stories from around the world. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant. This is Crime Tales Across Times, signing off.